My name is Megan Reed, and I'm 38 years old. I've been a police officer in Houston, Texas for over 15 years, but nothing in my career, not gang raids, not cartel busts, not even the nights when I came home with blood on my uniform, could prepare me for the day I had to testify against my own sister. People talk about how hard it is to face down a criminal, but no one warns you what it's like when the person sitting across from you in the courtroom is family. The courtroom was old, lined with heavy wooden benches that creaked every time someone shifted. The air was thick, carrying the faint scent of disinfectant mixed with the ghosts of hundreds of old cases. I'd sat in rooms just like this countless times, sometimes as a witness, sometimes in the back, waiting for justice to take its slow, painful course. But this morning felt different. Everything in me felt raw, exposed, as if the badge pinned to my chest weighed 10 times what it usually did. On the defense side, at the table under the harsh fluorescent lights, was my little sister, Jessica Reed. She looked nothing like the girl I'd grown up with. Her hair was styled perfectly, her suit was the kind I'd never be able to afford on a cop's salary, and her eyes darted nervously across the room. Next to her was her attorney, a polished guy from Dallas, the type who wore expensive watches and fake smiles. A stack of evidence sat on the table between them, a silent mountain that threatened to bury her. Evidence I had helped collect. But the part that twisted my stomach wasn't the evidence. It was the faces in the gallery. There was Mom, her hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes rimmed red and cheeks hollow from too many sleepless nights. Dad sat beside her, his cowbeer hat in his hands, the brim crushed from how hard he was gripping it. My Uncle Bob and Aunt Martha were there, along with Cousin Nick, all of them looking at Jessica with worry, and at me with something that stung even deeper than anger, disappointment. The truth is, they all blamed me for this. In their minds, I was the one who'd put Jessica on trial, not the choices she'd made, not the trail of stolen money and broken trust. I was the one tearing the family apart, just by doing my job. I overheard Mom whispering to Aunt Martha as I took my seat, "She's destroying us." Megan was always jealous of Jessica, always so cold. Her words hit me harder than any punch I'd taken on the job. That was the story in our family for as long as I could remember. Jessica was the golden child, prettier, more outgoing, the one who turned heads at every school event. I was the serious one, always in uniform, always studying or working overtime, rarely the life of the party. While Jessica was homecoming queen at our high school, I was pulling graveyard shifts at the 24-hour diner to help pay my tuition. She went to college on a full scholarship and made friends everywhere she went. I worked double shifts, pouring coffee for truckers and pulling in enough money to keep our apartment lights on after Mom lost her job. And still, no matter what I did, it never seemed to count. Jessica's wedding was the event of the year, white dress, country club, photos in the Houston Chronicle. Meanwhile, I was eating takeout in the squad car, trying to finish a case report before sunrise. Dad would brag to his friends about Jessica's big heart, her normal life, how she gave back to the community. Megan's always chasing something she can't catch, he'd say, a little too loudly. What he meant, of course, was that Jessica was easy to understand. I wasn't. When Jessica landed a job as a financial manager at one of Houston's biggest children's charities, the family was ecstatic. "She's finally found her purpose," a mom gushed at Thanksgiving. Nobody seemed to care that I was busting my ass tracking down traffickers and bringing drug rings to justice. "Jessica gets people fed and keeps the lights on for old folks," a dad would say proudly. "Megan, you still doing that police thing?" As if I might one day suddenly wake up and become someone else. Every family dinner, every holiday, it was the same. Jessica in the spotlight, me somewhere on the edge. Half invisible. She got the invitations, the phone calls, the late-night confessions. I got polite nods and the awkward, so, how's work? That never meant they wanted a real answer. Still, I tried not to let it get to me. I loved my sister, at least, the sister I remembered from childhood, the one who used to braid my hair and sneak cookies to me when I was studying. The world, though, had a way of pushing us apart. By the time we were adults, it was like we'd chosen different universes. Looking at her in that courtroom, so put together, so scared, I wondered if she'd ever really seen me at all. Or if, in her mind, I was just the bitter sister who ruined everything by refusing to look the other way. The bailiff called the room to order, and the judge took the bench. I stared down at my notes, hands trembling, heart pounding in a way it never did when I was facing down a suspect in a dark alley. The first witness was about to be called. I glanced one last time at Mom. She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. For the first time in my life, I wondered if this would be the day I lost my family for good. My family's loyalty was always a one-way street. As a kid, I never quite realized it, but now, sitting in that courtroom in full uniform, the reality pressed in like the Texas summer heat, suffocating, inescapable. I grew up hearing stories of how Jessica could do no wrong. Even her mistakes, even the messes she made, like the time she crashed Mom's minivan into the mailbox or lost Dad's lucky watch, were brushed off with laughter or gentle words. She's just sensitive, a mom would say. She's under a lot of pressure, a dad would explain. But when I forgot to unload the dishwasher or brought home a C on a math test, it was a lecture or, worse, that silent look of disappointment. Maybe that's why I ran toward the badge, because it came with rules, with lines you couldn't cross and a sense of order that family never seemed to have. Still, I remember the good days. We'd chase fireflies in the backyard and try to see who could stay out the latest without getting caught. Jessica would always win, flashing that easy grin that made everyone forgive her. She had a way of turning even her punishments into games. Grounded? She'd make a fort under the dining room table and invite me in for a secret meeting. When Mom was stressed, Jessica would dance around the kitchen, making silly faces until we were all laughing. I was the older sister, the rule follower, the one who made sure the chores got done. But it was Jessica who made our house feel alive. As we got older, though, the gap between us grew wider. High school only made it worse. Jessica was a natural, captain of the cheer squad, straight-A student without trying, every teacher's favorite. I spent my Friday nights in the library or pulling shifts at the 7-Eleven to pay for SAP prep classes. I knew from an early age that nobody was going to hand me anything. I had to fight for every inch. College brought more of the same. Jessica was off to UT Austin, invited to every party and photographed at every campus event. She joined a sorority and got a full ride thanks to her grades and charm. Meanwhile, I was living at home, commuting to community college, working weekends to cover my books, and filling out scholarship applications until my hands cramped. Eventually, I transferred to Sam Houston State and started interning with the Houston Police Department. My dream was simple: make detective, serve the city, do some good. That's not how my parents saw it. You really want to spend your life chasing criminals? Mom had asked, her voice full of doubt. It's dangerous work, Megan. Couldn't you find something safer? But I wanted to matter. I wanted my life to mean something more than just living in someone else's shadow. Jessica graduated with a degree in business and a fiancé, Ben Crawford, whose father owned half the dealerships in Harris County. Their wedding was held at a country club by the bayou, and it was the kind of affair people gossiped about for months. I wore my best dress, bought on sale, and worked double shifts to afford the plane ticket for our aunt from Florida. Nobody really noticed. And that was fine. I was there for Jessica. After the wedding, Jessica's star kept rising. She got a job at the Houston Children's Foundation, helping manage their donations and finances. Every family dinner, it was the same story. Jessica got the hugs, the praise, the attention. Dad would ask about her work, nodding with pride. "That's real service, Jess," he'd say. "Giving back." Meanwhile, I was making arrests in the Fifth Ward, pulling overtime during hurricane season, and getting maybe a quick "be careful out there" mega before they'd turn back to whatever Jessica was saying. I tried not to let it show, but every time, it hurt. I know I'm not the easiest person. Police work changes you. You start to see the world as a place full of hidden dangers, locked doors, dark alleys, the sound of footsteps behind you at night. You learn to carry pain quietly, because you can't afford to show weakness on the job. Maybe my parents saw that and decided it was easier to embrace the daughter who made them proud in public, rather than the one who brought home stories they didn't want to hear. The breaking point came 6 months ago, at Mom's birthday dinner at a steakhouse on Westheimer. I'd just wrapped up an investigation that brought down a city councilman and 3 contractors for bribery and fraud, millions of dollars siphoned from city projects. The mayor himself had called to thank me, and for a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, my family would finally see what I was capable of. Instead, Jessica walked in late, teary-eyed, her makeup smudged. The room changed instantly. Everyone crowded around her, offering comfort. "Work is so hard," as she sobbed, "I just want to make a difference." When I tried to share my news, she cut me off with that old, familiar snap. "Not everything's about you, Megan." The table fell silent. Dad patted her hand, Mom offered her tissues, and everyone ignored me. It was the same script, different year. I left that dinner early. On the drive home, Houston's city lights blurred by, and I wondered if there was ever a world where I could have both, family and purpose. Or if, for someone like me, you could only ever choose one. For months after that birthday dinner, I avoided family gatherings. Calls from my parents went unanswered. Jessica's texts, bright with emojis and little hearts, stayed unopened. I needed time to breathe, to focus on my work, to remind myself that what I did mattered, even if it wasn't flashy or comfortable for anyone at home. Houston can be a lonely city when you're carrying secrets. At work, I was just a Sergeant Reed, the hard-edged cop with a knack for finding what others missed. On the street, people called me EME Ori officer, and in the department, even the guys who'd once doubted me now deferred to my judgment. I took pride in every case closed, every family reunited, every kid we kept out of harm's way. But no matter how many drug busts or missing persons cases I solved, the echo of my mother's words haunted me, and Megan was always jealous of Jessica, always the cold one. Was that really how they saw me? Did they ever realize how much I'd sacrificed, how many holidays and birthdays I'd worked, so that I could keep our city safe? I threw myself into work, picking up every overtime shift I could, volunteering for night patrols, joining task forces that took me out to the edge of the county and back. I let the work fill the silence my family left behind. It was about 4 months later, during a muggy late August morning, when my whole world tilted. I'd just finished a 12-hour shift and was halfway through a microwaved breakfast burrito in the precinct break room when Captain Sanders came in, holding a thick manila folder. He slid it across the table to me, his eyes tired but serious. "Read, this is coming down from the feds. They want our cooperation. Anne," his voice lowered, "I think you're going to want to see the names in here." Curiosity prickled my skin as I opened the folder. The first page was stamped, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Internal Financial Crimes Unit. I flipped to the list of persons of interest. The first name jumped out at me, Jessica Reed. For a moment, the world stilled. I thought I must be hallucinating, maybe from exhaustion. But there it was, in black and white. My sister's name, tied to the Houston Children's Foundation, her beloved job, the source of so much family pride. I skimmed the summary, my stomach turning. There were bank records, wire transfers, evidence of funds diverted from charitable accounts to a handful of personal ones. The total, over $200,000 in donations, money meant for children's surgeries and emergency support, had vanished. Some of it paid for first-class tickets to Miami, hotel suites, and spa weekends. There were luxury store charges in Dallas and Austin, places Jessica had posted about on Instagram with captions like "a treat yourself, you deserve it." Had anyone in my family seen the warning signs? I pressed my palm to my forehead, trying to steady myself. The evidence was overwhelming. Still, a part of me clung to hope. Maybe there was some explanation, a mistake, a mix-up, something Jessica could clear up with a single phone call. But the more I read, the harder it was to deny the truth. She'd gotten careless, assuming her reputation and our family name would shield her from suspicion. Maybe she thought nobody would look too closely at the golden child. The next day, I sat in my car outside the foundation's office, watching as Jessica arrived in her usual style: perfect hair, sunglasses, a big smile for the receptionist. I wanted to storm inside, demand the truth, shake her by the shoulders and ask if she realized what she'd done. But I was a cop. I had to do this the right way. The investigation moved quickly. Federal agents dug up more evidence, connecting the dots I'd missed. It wasn't just one slip, it was a pattern stretching back years. Each small theft built on the last, like she was testing the limits of what she could get away with. I knew what I had to do, even though every part of me screamed for a way out. I met with the district attorney, explaining the family connection and offering to step aside. He listened patiently, then shook his head. "Sergeant Reed, you're the best we've got on financial crimes. This isn't about your sister anymore. It's about the kids who needed that money. It's about justice." He was right. As much as it hurt, I couldn't walk away, not from the case, and not from my duty. That night, I lay awake in my small apartment, Houston's humid air pressing through the window screens. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Hey, Meg. Mom's worried about you. Come to dinner Sunday? Dad says hi. Miss you, sis." I stared at the message, my eyes burning. How could I ever tell her that soon? I'd be the one leading the investigation against her. I rolled over, hugging my pillow tight, and let myself cry. Not because I was weak, but because I knew what was coming, and I wasn't sure my heart could survive it. I wish I could say the investigation took me by surprise. The truth is, deep down, I'd sensed something was off for a long time. Jessica's social media was a highlight reel of new handbags, rooftop brunches, weekend escapes to Lake Travis, and the kind of designer shoes I'd only seen in department store windows. She always brushed it off as just little treats, or joked that she was a master of online discounts. I wanted to believe her. But the evidence sitting in my hands left no room for doubt. As the weeks rolled on, the FBI and I worked side by side, combing through bank statements, flagged wire transfers, and a trail of digital receipts. Jessica's spending had exploded over the last 3 years. She was living large, far beyond what her official salary could cover. I saw the numbers and felt my insides knot with every page. Each entry told a story: $3,200 for a resort in Miami, $1,500 at a Dallas boutique, thousands dropped on luxury skincare, spa getaways, private trainers. And beneath it all, donation checks that had been lost, error delayed, or rerouted at the last minute. One night, after another 10-hour workday, I sat in my kitchen, poring over the case files, staring at the names of the kids who'd been hurt by the thefts. There was Maria Gassier, age 6. Her cancer treatment postponed because the foundation said funds were temporarily depleted. Her mother had emailed in Spanish, begging for help, not knowing the money was sitting in my sister's shopping account. There was also Tommy Pattison, age 9, who went months without a needed hearing aid. Their stories became the ghosts that haunted my sleep. I barely saw my parents that month. They'd call, leaving cheerful voicemails about church events, neighborhood gossip, asking when I'd come by for Sunday dinner. I'd always find an excuse: another late shift, a stack of paperwork, an emergency in the district. I told myself I was just busy, but really, I was hiding. Hiding from the fact that soon I'd have to tell them what Jessica had done. Hiding from what that would mean for us as a family. The hardest day of my life wasn't the night I got shot in the line of duty or the day I saw my first homicide scene. It was the day I sat across from the district attorney, feeling my badge heavy on my chest, and gave the go-ahead for an arrest warrant for my own sister. The knock at Jessica's door came on a Tuesday morning in late September. The sky was washed out, grey with a hint of fall coolness, but my hands were sweating under my gloves. 2 federal agents waited beside me as Jessica opened her front door, still in her sleep shirt, hair tied up, a mug of coffee in hand. Her eyes widened in confusion and fear as she recognized my uniform. "Meg," she whispered. I kept my voice steady, reading her rights as tears rolled down her cheeks. She barely fought back, just asked, "Can you please tell Mom I'm sorry?" By that afternoon, Houston's news channels were ablaze with the scandal. Local children's charity manager arrested on embezzlement charges. Police officer sister helped crack the case. My phone exploded. Coworkers, media, even old friends from high school. But from my family, there was only stunned silence. Mom's call came late that night. Her voice was small, trembling. "How could you do this to your own sister? Don't you know how hard she's worked? She was always so good, Megan. She just needed help." Dad's message was more measured, but the hurt was there. "You always were the tough one, Meg. But did it have to be like this? You really had to destroy your own blood?" I sat on my couch, clutching my badge, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun circles in the dark. I thought about quitting, about walking away from the force, from Houston, from everything I'd built. But then I remembered the families, the sick kids, the parents who trusted us and been let down. I couldn't walk away. I wouldn't. A few days later, Jessica was arraigned in a Harris County courtroom packed with reporters, charity board members, and half our extended family. I walked into the building through a side entrance, my head down, the weight of every gaze of physical force against my shoulders. Inside, Mom sat in the front row, gripping her rosary, her cheeks pale and hollow. Dad didn't look at me. My Uncle Bob glared, as if I'd personally stolen Christmas. Only Aunt Martha gave me a weak smile as I passed, her eyes full of unshed tears. Jessica, in a pale blue suit, sat between her lawyer and a pile of evidence files. She looked older than I remembered, her face drawn and tired, the sparkle that had once defined her completely gone. For a split second, she glanced at me, not with hate, but with a sort of pleading sadness that stabbed me straight through. The judge called the case. The opening arguments began. I forced myself to sit up straight, to focus, to remember that justice mattered, even if it meant tearing my own world apart. I wasn't just fighting for the kids who lost their chance. I was fighting to prove to myself that, in the end, doing the right thing was worth everything it cost. The first day of Jessica's trial felt like watching my whole life unravel in slow motion. Every detail, the shuffle of the bailiff's feet, the dull hum of the air conditioning, the relentless click of reporters' cameras, seemed magnified. I sat straight-backed at the prosecution's table, in uniform, but inside I was a storm of guilt, anger, and something like mourning. Jessica's attorney, a slick Dallas man named Tyler Holmes, started the defense with an emotional appeal. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my client is not a hardened criminal. She is a devoted daughter, a loving sister, a woman overwhelmed by the pressures of doing good in a complicated world. He painted Jessica as a victim of circumstance, someone who simply made a mistake and was being persecuted by her own flesh and blood. I watched the jury closely, saw their eyes soften. For a split second, I almost wanted to believe him. But the evidence was clear. The prosecution called witness after witness, accountants, charity board members, even parents of sick children. Each one added another stone to the mountain building against Jessica. Detective Ray Thompson, my friend and colleague, took the stand. I could see how uncomfortable he was, glancing at me before laying out the facts. Bank records showing wire transfers to Jessica's personal account, forged signatures, doctored invoices. The pattern was systematic, Ray testified. Funds intended for medical care, equipment, and emergency housing were siphoned away for personal use. The jury looked restless. Numbers and paperwork could be dry, and I saw attention drifting. So, I did something I'd never done before. I leaned in and asked the prosecution to let me question Ray myself. The judge nodded. I approached the witness stand, my voice steady but my hands trembling. Detective Thompson, can you tell the court about Maria Garcia's case? He nodded, his face grave. Maria is 7. She has leukemia. Her family applied to the foundation for help with chemotherapy costs. They were approved, but the payment was delayed for 6 weeks. The money was gone. I turned to the jury. 6 weeks is a lifetime for a sick child. I could see their eyes sharpening, sympathy turning to outrage. I asked Ray about Tommy Pattison, too, the 9-year-old boy who went months without a hearing aid because the foundation claimed funds had run out. Did anyone at the foundation notify the family of the delay? I pressed. Ray shook his head. They received a form letter. That's all. For a moment, the courtroom was utterly silent. I caught Jessica's gaze. She was pale, her lips pressed into a thin line, fighting back tears. I hoped she was thinking about those families, about the children who'd suffered because of her decisions. Cross-examination from her attorney was aggressive. He tried to discredit Ray, suggesting the investigation was rushed, that he was biased because of his connection to me. But Ray held firm, his answers precise and unemotional. Every attempt to muddy the waters only drew the jury's attention back to the evidence. During the lunch break, my family cornered me in the courthouse hallway. Mom, her voice shaking, demanded, How can you do this to her, Megan? She's your sister." Dad looked at the floor, unable to meet my eyes. "People make mistakes, Meg. You don't have to ruin her life." Uncle Bob stepped forward, his face red. "You always resented Jessica. This is your revenge, isn't it?" I swallowed hard, struggling to keep my voice level. Revenge? She stole money meant for cancer patients. 4 children. She didn't borrow it. She spent it on handbags and vacations. This isn't about jealousy or bitterness. This is about what's right. Aunt Martha tried to intervene. "You don't know the pressure she was under. That job, dealing with so many heartbreaking stories." I cut her off. "I get pressure, Aunt Martha. You think it's easy being a cop in this city? You think I haven't been threatened, haven't spent sleepless nights worrying I did enough? But I never let that be an excuse to hurt people." Mom was crying now, silent tears that made my chest ache. "That's different, Megan," as she whispered. "You chose that life." For a second, I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her if she ever noticed how much of her love was conditional. How, no matter what I did, Jessica's comfort and reputation always came first. Instead, I just said quietly, "You're right. I chose this. I chose to do what's right, even when it hurts." Back in the courtroom, the prosecution rested. Jessica's lawyer began her defense. She took the stand herself, looking frail and contrite. She cried in all the right places. Her apologies carefully worded. "I never meant to hurt anyone," as she sniffled, dabbing at her eyes. "I was just so overwhelmed. I thought I could pay it back." When my turn to cross-examine came, I forced myself to meet her gaze. "How did you plan to replace over $200,000, Jessica? Your cards were maxed out. You had no savings." Her voice broke. I thought maybe I'd get a loan. I was working on it. I didn't know about Maria Geysir's case." I leaned in. "You signed the approval letter. You processed the payment. And then you diverted the funds. You read that little girl's file and still sent her family away empty-handed. Why?" Jessica burst into tears. The courtroom watched in silence as her composure fell apart. The verdict was swift. The jury found her guilty on all counts. As the judge read the decision, Jessica's face crumpled. I felt no victory, just an overwhelming fatigue, like I'd just finished a marathon I never wanted to run. When they led Jessica away, she looked back at me, her eyes searching, desperate. For a split second, she was my little sister again, the girl who used to braid my hair and beg me for bedtime stories. But then she was gone, and all that was left was the heavy, aching silence of my family's stares. The days following the verdict blurred together like the endless Texas rain, gray and unrelenting. News of Jessica's conviction hit Houston fast. I tried to shield myself from the coverage, but everywhere I turned, local TV, social media, even coffee shop chatter, there was Jessica's mugshot, paired with headlines that made my stomach knot. Charity manager sentenced, police sister's testimony seals case. If there was sympathy, it wasn't for me. I went back to work, but something in the station had shifted. Colleagues gave me space, nodding with a kind of cautious respect. Some left notes in my locker, simple messages, "You did the right thing." But at home, the quiet was oppressive. Calls from my parents became rare, clipped. Mom's voice, when it did break through, was colder than winter. "I hope you're happy, Megan. You got what you wanted. Your sister's in prison." What did I want? I asked myself that every night as I sat on my porch, the glow of the Houston skyline in the distance. I wanted kids to get their medicine. I wanted my family to understand that justice wasn't a choice I made lightly, but something I owed to every person who trusted the law. I wanted, for once, to be seen for who I really was, not the cold one, and not the jealous sister, but someone who stood up for what was right, no matter how much it cost. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later, and the courtroom was packed, this time with more reporters than relatives. Jessica's supporters had dwindled. Even the most loyal family members found it hard to defend stealing from sick children. Before the sentence was announced, the judge opened the floor for victim impact statements. One by one, parents stepped forward to speak. Maria Garcia's mother, tiny, nervous, her English hesitant, looked right at Jessica. "My daughter asked me why the lady who was supposed to help us took her medicine money. I didn't know what to tell her." A father spoke about pawning his wedding ring to pay for a surgery the foundation had promised. Another mother described weeks of fear as her son's treatment was delayed, her voice trembling. Jessica sobbed openly at the table. I watched, my emotions a swirl of sorrow and grim validation. I didn't want her to hurt. But the truth was, real people had been hurt for years. Maybe now the world could see that. Finally, the judge turned to Jessica. "Ms. Reed, you have been found guilty of embezzling over $200,000 from the Houston Children's Foundation. Your actions caused significant harm to families already suffering. This court recognizes the personal cost to your family, especially your sister, Officer Reed, who chose to uphold her duty despite that cost. Such integrity is rare." The sentence was pronounced, 7 years in federal prison, with 3 years of supervised release after. Full restitution, over $240,000, including damages, was ordered. As the bailiff led Jessica away, she looked over her shoulder. For a fleeting second, our eyes met, and I saw the little sister I used to protect. I wanted to reach for her, to say something that would make it hurt less. But she was already gone, swallowed by the system. After the hearing, as I packed my briefcase, Mom found me in the hallway. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She just said quietly, "You got what you wanted. Family's supposed to stick together, Megan." I closed my eyes, heart aching. Family is supposed to support each other's dreams. Family should be proud when one of their own protects the innocent. But that's never how it's been with us, has it? Dad stood nearby, silent, trying to catch my eye. "You don't understand, Meg," he said softly. But I did. I understood all too well. "I get it, Dad. When Jessica needed comfort, you were there. When she made mistakes, you found excuses. But when have any of you stood up for me? When have you ever said you were proud of the work I do?" He had no answer. That night, I drove home through the city I'd spent my whole life protecting. The lights were blurry through my tired eyes. I parked outside my apartment, hands trembling on the steering wheel, and let myself feel it all: the grief, the exhaustion, the love that hadn't been enough. When I got inside, my phone buzzed. A message from my partner at the station. Saw the coverage. You did good. Drinks after shift. Real family, if you want it. For the first time in months, I managed to smile. Sitting there in the quiet, I realized something. Blood didn't guarantee loyalty. Family, the kind that mattered, was sometimes the people who respected your choices, who saw your worth without needing headlines or apologies. Jessica would serve her sentence. Maybe one day she'd understand. As for me, I still had a job to do, a city to serve, and a new sense of who I was beyond the stories my family had written about me. Life after the trial felt like stepping into a new world where everything looked the same but nothing felt familiar. In Houston, the fall air grew crisper, and football games returned to neighborhood parks. But for me, time moved strangely, sometimes too slow, sometimes all at once. At work, my colleagues treated me with a mix of admiration and cautious distance. I knew they'd seen the headlines, read the blogs. I had become a lesson in integrity, a warning about the personal cost of doing what's right. Some officers pulled me aside, awkward but kind. You did what you had to, Reed. Others just nodded, a silent show of respect that, for the first time, didn't feel hollow. My captain even offered me a new assignment, a promotion to lieutenant in internal affairs. He said, We need people with your backbone, Megan. This department needs more like you." I should have felt proud. Instead, I just felt tired. I accepted the promotion with a firm handshake and a quiet promise to myself, never forget who you are, even when it hurts. But at home, the walls felt closer than ever. My family's silence was loud. Thanksgiving came and went, and my parents celebrated with relatives in Dallas. My phone was quiet, except for the occasional forwarded meme from Aunt Martha. I spent the holiday with my partner and a few other officers, people who understood what it meant to make hard choices and still show up for each other, even on the loneliest days. One rainy Sunday, as the city lights shimmered on wet pavement, I drove past my childhood home. The old brick house on Hawthorne Street looked smaller than I remembered, the porch swing hanging crooked, paint chipping from the rails. I parked across the street, engine idling, watching as the neighbors' kids played tag under the oak trees. For a moment, I let myself remember those long-ago summers, fireflies, sweet tea, Jessica daring me to climb the fence, and Mom calling us in for supper. For the first time in months, I felt a pang of nostalgia, sharp but strangely comforting. I didn't knock on the door. I wasn't ready for another cold reception or for the questions I knew my parents weren't ready to answer. Instead, I drove back downtown, windows down, letting the wind and rain wash the ache from my heart. That night, a letter arrived from Jessica. The envelope was plain, the handwriting familiar but shaky. I sat at my kitchen table, hands trembling, and opened it slowly. "Meg, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I keep replaying everything in my head, the choices I made, the people I hurt. I never wanted this. I wish I could go back, be a better sister, a better person. I'm sorry for what I did to those kids, and I'm sorry for making you carry this weight alone. Maybe one day you can forgive me. Until then, I hope you find happiness, even if it's without me. Love, Jess." I read her words 3 times, tears blurring the page. For so long, I'd imagined this letter would be full of excuses, but instead, there was only regret. For the first time since the trial, I let myself cry, not out of anger, but because I knew I still loved her, even if I couldn't fix what was broken. I wrote back the next day, keeping my words simple. Jess, I don't know if I can forgive you yet, but I hope you'll forgive yourself. Do your time, make it count, help people if you can. I'll be okay. I hope you will too. M. Sealing the letter, I felt a little lighter, as if letting go of the hope for a perfect family gave me permission to build something new for myself. In the weeks that followed, I poured myself into work, overseeing investigations, training younger officers, and spending more evenings with colleagues who had become my chosen family. My partner, Detective Lisa Tran, checked in every morning. Sometimes she brought coffee, sometimes just a joke or a nudge to get me out of my own head. Her support was quiet, never pushy, but it reminded me that not all family ties are forged by blood. One Friday night, after a long shift, Lisa and I sat on the tailgate of my truck, the city skyline glowing in the distance. You ever regret it, Meg? She asked, her tone gentle. I thought for a moment, watching the headlights sweep past. Not for a second. If I had to do it all again, I would. But sometimes, I wish things were different. I wish my parents could see me, not just as the tough one, but as their daughter. As someone who tried her best. Lisa nodded, her face serious. They'll come around. Maybe not now, but one day. You can't control how they see you, only how you carry yourself. That night, I realized she was right. The world wouldn't change overnight, and neither would my family. But maybe, just maybe, I could change what family meant to me. And as I drove home, Houston sprawling out in every direction, I felt the first faint spark of hope, a sense that, despite everything, I was exactly where I needed to be. Winter came to Houston in fits and starts, cool breezes, scattered rain, but no real snow. I worked long hours, sometimes losing myself in the rhythm of paperwork, witness interviews, and the endless shuffle of case files. The headlines faded, and Jessica's story slipped down the news feeds, replaced by fresher scandals and sports scores. But for the families she hurt, and for me, the consequences lingered. Sometimes, I'd run into people in the community who recognized me, not from my uniform, but from the trial. Parents whose kids I'd helped get to school safely, or business owners who'd called when their stores were vandalized. Officer Reed, right? The one who... They never finished the sentence, but the gratitude in their eyes said enough. A few even stopped to say thanks, quietly, as if they knew the price I'd paid. Those moments didn't erase the pain, but they helped. Every time someone trusted me, every time a mother reached for my hand at a crime scene, I felt a little stronger. I was invited to speak at the city's annual Law Enforcement and Community Relations Conference, a surprise that both honored and terrified me. I'd never been comfortable in the spotlight, and public speaking ranked somewhere between root canal and paperwork in my list of favorite things. But my captain insisted. People need to hear from someone who's been through the fire, Megan. You've got something real to say. I wrote my speech late at night, sitting at my dining table, with the city's glow filtering through my window blinds. When the day came, I stood behind the podium, uniform pressed, badge gleaming, hands steady. My name is Megan Reed, I began, my voice ringing through the hall. I'm a police officer, a daughter, and a sister. This year, I had to choose between loyalty to my family and my duty to the truth. I chose the truth. It cost me a lot. But it saved the people who needed me most, children, parents, neighbors. I learned that sometimes, Doing the right thing means standing alone. But you're never truly alone if you're standing up for justice. Real family is the one you build on trust, respect, and courage, not just blood. The room was silent when I finished. Then, slowly, people stood, clapping, not loudly, but with a kind of sincerity that means more than any trophy or medal. Afterward, a young officer approached me, her voice trembling. "My brother's in trouble, and I'm the only one who knows. Your story, it helped me. Thank you." I realized then how important it was to share what I'd been through. If my pain could light the way for someone else, it was worth it. As the weeks passed, I took more small steps forward. I started volunteering with the Houston Youth Mentoring Program, spending Saturday mornings teaching self-defense to teenage girls and talking to them about resilience, choices, and finding their voice. I saw myself in some of those girls, quiet, tough, longing for approval that never seemed to come. One, a shy 16-year-old named Ariana, lingered after class one day. "Officer Reed, can I ask you something? How do you keep going when your family doesn't believe in you?" I hesitated, then gave her the only answer I knew. You find people who do. You show up for yourself, every single day. And you remember, family is sometimes who you choose, not who you're born to. Those Saturday mornings became the highlight of my week. With each class, I felt more whole, less like the woman defined by her family's disappointment, more like the leader I'd worked so hard to become. But change doesn't happen all at once. One Sunday, I got a call from Aunt Martha. "Your mom wants to see you," as she said, voice careful. "It's not easy for her. For any of us. But maybe it's time." I hesitated, the old ache rising in my chest. But something inside me knew I was ready, not for forgiveness or reconciliation, necessarily, but for closure. That afternoon, I drove to my parents' house, parking outside the home where I'd once spent endless summer nights and Christmas mornings. The porch was the same, the swing still creaky. I sat in the car, summoning my courage, then walked up the steps. Mom opened the door, looking older than I remembered, her face lined with worry and grief. "Megan," as she said softly. "Come in." The kitchen was quiet, filled with the scent of brewing coffee and something baking in the oven. Her way of coping, always. We sat across from each other, hands wrapped around mismatched mugs. There were no accusations, no angry words. Instead, she said, "I don't know how to be proud and sad at the same time. I love you. I miss Jessica. I wish things were different." For the first time, I didn't try to fix her feelings or change the story. I just listened. "Me too, Mom. But I did what I had to. I couldn't let more families get hurt." She nodded, tears glimmering in her eyes. "I know. I'm sorry it took me so long to see that." We talked for a while, about childhood memories, about the city, even about the future. We didn't solve everything, but the conversation was honest, a beginning. Driving home, I realized the pain hadn't disappeared, but it no longer owned me. I'd found a way to move forward, to carry both love and loss, to stand in my truth. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace with who I was, and the life I was building, one choice at a time.